Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm wearing the red tie because I'm going to talk about China. No, I actually had something else going on, and I had already planned this video and researched it, so I'm wearing my second favorite tie. But if you like what I have to say, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you dislike what I have to say, then go ahead and hit dislike. Tell me in the comments what you disagree with. If you want to reach me, go ahead and go on to the description of the video and you'll see my Instagram, Twitter, and Parler account. I'm actually trying to build my following there as well. I'd like to thank you if you've already subscribed and viewed my videos, because the channel is growing a lot faster than I thought it was going to. But I'm here to talk about China and the way China both controls their country and the American companies that do business in China. In the end, if an American company does business in China, it is supporting the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. Because the CCP controls everything that happens within China. Just like it does in the DPRK, or North Korea, or the DDR, which was East Germany. The Communist Party actually controls everything. So any business that supports China supports the Chinese Communist Party. Now, with that being said, we're going to go into a little bit deeper about what's going on. There's actually a bill in Congress right now, and it is to enforce going against companies that are doing business with China through the Uyghur Muslim population. The Uyghur Muslims, if you don't know, is a minority in China. Many of them have been imprisoned in, you can call them re-education, you can call them forced labor camps. In the end, it becomes forced labor. There's allegations that there's also organ harvesting going on in these camps. There's allegations that Uyghur Muslims are forced to work in mines, retrieving valuable minerals, which are used in your cell phones and your iPad and your computers. And I will say this as somebody who owns an iPhone, an iPad, and a Mac computer, that the act currently in front of Congress, two of the major companies that are arguing against this act that will censure China based on forced labor are Nike and Apple. And as somebody who has run a lot of miles when I spent 23 years in the Army, and I still go to the gym every day and wear my Nikes, so maybe either my Nikes or my Apple products will start to cost more because they have to be produced somewhere else. Because unlike Japan, the United States is still arguing about it, whereas Japan has encouraged their countries to divest from China. And the current president has made an effort to bring manufacturing back home from China. And yet China is a place where forced labor is a normal occupation. We can go back to the Great Leap Forward with the industrialization of China and the man-made famine that followed that. We could talk about the Cultural Revolution, where students beat their own teachers to death, to today, where you have a minority Uyghur Muslim population that's been put into camps. Call them forced labor, call them re-education, call them whatever you want. In the end, this minority Uyghur Muslim population has been put in concentration camps. There's very little difference between what the Nazis did in the late 30s and early 40s in Germany and what the Chinese Communist Party is doing now. And the fact that Nike and Apple and these other companies that have their manufacturing in China are lobbying against this bill in the United States Constitution or United States Congress, there's no difference. There's no difference between what they're doing and what Henry Ford did in supporting the Nazi Party. The camps the Uyghur Muslims are in the same province that the Disney Corporation filmed the live action Mulan. And thank this province for their help for filming this movie. And yet, there's approximately 1 million Uyghur Muslims in camps in this same province. And they're being forced to work in these mines, similar to the Soviet gulags. Now, as I've said, I own Nikes. I've always liked them. Would I be willing to pay more for them if they're produced in a place without forced labor? Yes. I have an iPhone, an iPad, and a Mac. Would I be willing to pay more for them if they were produced in a place without forced labor? Yes, I would. But if these companies don't change their tone, then I, for one, will find different brands to buy. Because we'll go back to my thought process of principles are easy until you sacrifice something for them. And Nike is a prime example. Colin Kaepernick made a point of kneeling and complains that because of his social justice work, NFL teams will not hire him. Well, his lack of development as a quarterback is why they won't hire them or hire him. But Nike will sponsor him, and Nike will put him in advertisements. And that's great for America. But what about the 1 million Uyghur Muslims that are suffering in these camps? Oh, we're not going to talk about that because that just goes too far. So if you're going to stand for social justice, then it's time for you to actually do it. And this is not just in the United States, this is across the world. You stand up for what's right. And if what's right costs more, then so be it. Because it's still the right thing to do. A convenient right is always easier than the complicated right or the more expensive right. And maybe it's time to stand up for that more expensive right, that more complicated right. Let's look beyond our borders to what's right and what's wrong. Yes, we have our issues internally. And with enough people that care, we will figure out how to work through those issues. But we cannot lose sight of populations in other places that are suffering because of this. Moving forward from this, a Chinese professor just did a video talking about how the Chinese have infiltrated the American inner circle. Now, and I'm going to look at my notes to quote this exactly. There's two organizations, the Confucius Institutions and 1,000 Talents. Now, these two institutions, the Confucius Institutions, offer to bring Chinese professors to American universities. And both at the university and the high school level, offer classes in Mandarin and Cantonese. At the same time, they were recruiting assets. The 1,000 Talents was paying Western professors for their intellectual material. So the Chinese have control of this. Flashback to the 40s, 50s, and 60s. We use the same type of institutions to recruit from the Iron Curtain and China, and they did the same thing to us. And what it does is you take these students who have a future in foreign service or intelligence. You offer free lessons in Mandarin, Cantonese, and along the way you recruit them. We let them into our institutions of higher learning. But the intellectual property flows to China. The ability to influence them flows to China. Why is China investing in Africa and South America? Because some of those are the fastest growing economies in the world. Brazil is a prime example. But if you've actually read Confession of an Economic Hitman, then loans from the International Monetary Fund, loans from these Western organizations, loans from China, from the Chinese Communist Party. You default on these loans, then somebody takes over your port. Then suddenly that port's in control of somebody else. That is the game they're playing. Then they take this port and it becomes a naval base. Then that becomes a People's Liberation Army base to go with the People's Liberation Navy. Now, is there a way to stop the process of what's going on? That's where it becomes scary, because as somebody who has degrees in economics and international relations, I understand history as well. If you research the position the United States and Japan were in the late 30s into 1941, when the United States started to starve Japan for oil, that led to the attack on Pearl Harbor in the Philippines and Singapore and Hong Kong. The same thing can be done to China, because that is the one natural resource they don't have. But is that the situation we want to get into? The smarter method is to force American companies and Western companies to divest from China. Bring your manufacturing back home, and then let international relations play out as they are. Japan has started that. We as Americans can do the same thing. Because if we devolve into a war beyond the asymmetric / fifth generation war we're fighting now, there are very ugly results for everyone. So let these companies, you know what they're doing, and let them know you want them to change it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and let you go for this evening. But please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you disagree, go ahead and hit dislike. Tell me what you disagree with in the comments. We can have a civil discussion about it. Once again, I'd like to thank you for the rapid growth of the channel. It really happened a lot faster than I thought it would. And in the future, I'm going to go more into politics and veterans issues and criminal justice reform. Like I said, I already have a psychologist that's willing to come on and we can talk about criminal justice and rehabilitation. So like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And with that being said, everybody have a good evening.